TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
Hello and welcome back to Kick It Naturally. I'm your host, TC Hale, and I'm here to have all kinds of fun on episode number 370. I got a friend that's going to hang out with us. So Karen Martell from the Other Side of Weight Loss podcast. It's an excellent podcast, especially she really does a lot of things for women's health. Really digs into hormones. That's really why I wanted her to come on, was to talk a lot about hormones and kind of open up my brain a little bit to learn more about the hormonal side of things. And so we're going to have her on and we're going to dig right into that. But you really got to check out her website. She's got this great quiz that you can take that kind of gives you some insights into what may be going on with your hormones. So we'll talk about that in the show, and I'll put it on the show notes page too. But let's jump in now to my interview with Karen Martell. Karen Martell is here to play with me on the Kick It Naturally show. Karen, how the heck are you?
This is great. This is our second play date of the week. I'm excited.
This all I do is hang out with Karen Martell. That's my job. That's all I do with my life, really. And my life is grand.
It is. When you play with me, it is. It's great.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. So those of you who don't know Karen, you have to check out her Beyond Weight Loss podcast. It's The Other Side of Weight Loss is really what they call it. So just look up The Other Side of Weight Loss. It's a fantastic podcast. And she had this brilliant guest on there recently. Actually, I think my show is probably going to come out before yours. I think my interview probably won't be out till like March or something, but yours is going to be out real soon. So you might have to wait around to hear me on The Other Side of Weight Loss, but hear the other stuff because she does a great job on there. Karen, how's it going?
It's going. It's great. Yeah. It's been a cold week where I am, like freezing cold. I've got a blanket on me right now because I'm
Holy
so cold.
Mackerel. I think you might be doing it wrong.
Besides that, the sun is shining. So, hey.
Yeah, I'm not very good at cold weather. I got to be where the people thaw out, or I get ornery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about. We got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today, and I'm really excited about it. But why don't we find out what everybody really always wants to know first, and that is, how did your hair get so fancy? I don't think I could pull off something that fancy. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I was aging, and I decided, you know what? I got to still look cool. And so I decided
you made it happen.
To just slowly, it just got shorter and shorter and funkier and funkier. And now it's like, oh, this is perfect. And every time I've tried to grow it out, I've had it for years. And every time I've tried to grow it out, I say to myself, oh my gosh, I now look like a mom. No offense to all you moms out there. I'm a mom too. I just,
you're a mom, right?
It just looks so bad when I start to grow it out and it has this like feathery look. And I'm like, nope, I just went from being cool to just being a plain old mom, and I just have to cut it so it keeps me young.
Yeah, I dig it. I super dig it. I definitely wish I was cool enough to do something like that. I'm not that guy. I'm not that cool. So that's just where I land. But let's talk a little bit about what you do. We'll go beyond hairstyle. Yes, that's my new podcast. It's Beyond Your Hairstyle. So tell us the kind of stuff that you do, and your podcast, we talk about a lot of the same stuff. We actually agree on things. You don't always find people that agree on things. I don't know if you knew that or not. You know that some people in the health field like disagree on things?
Oh, so much.
Yeah, they do a little bit of disagree.
It's like religion. Yeah.
Religion,
politics, and diet.
Right. Me and Karen started playing together because we agree about some stuff. But tell us what you focus mostly on with your show, because you gear a lot towards women's health.
Yep.
Tell us some more.
Well, I really focus on women that are actually really trying to be healthy. They might be following a good, clean diet. They might be keto, paleo, I do get the odd vegan or vegetarian, but women that are actually like, they're trying to take care of themselves. They're working out, they're eating well, they're doing what they're, told to do. And yet they still can't lose the weight. And it's something that I personally struggled with for many years. And it was terrible because here I was, a very, very healthy person. I was doing what I was being told. I was trying every diet under the sun. I was working out 7 days a week, trying to become the runner, the CrossFitter, thinking that's what I had to do to get my body back. And I continued to gain more and more and more weight. And it was so unfair. And nobody believed me that I was actually not going home and shoving down a cake. I didn't have sugar addiction. I wasn't eating fast food. I was a healthy person. And yet my health was deteriorating and my weight was going up, even though I was doing all these things.
And I would have been one of those annoying people that didn't believe you. When I was working as a personal trainer, I totally would have, because I didn't know all the stuff that we know now, that people are different, they process foods differently and the same thing. So when I was a trainer, I got in shape, and what I did was I thought that was the way to get in shape, and I thought that would work for anybody. Yep. So when I told a client to do that and they didn't show up with their own six-pack, then I'm like, oh, you're lying to me. You're not really doing the things that I'm telling you to do. And people deal with this so much that they start to feel like maybe they're broken, and maybe they're just kind of stuck that way. The thing that works for everybody else is not working for me.
And that is exactly what you feel like. Like I felt like a switch went off, like somebody went and turned off a switch. I had my first kid, and within 2 years, it was like all at once, boom, this light went off. And I got chronic insomnia. I started having digestive problems. I was getting skin rashes. I was gaining weight. I was puffy. I was hormonal. I was having migraines like for 2 weeks out of the month. Yes. All within a few months, this happened. And I'm going, what just happened here? And it took so long to figure it out, because there's no information out there for women like me that is like, okay, I'm actually healthy, like as far as, what I'm doing and eating and working out. And my trainer is sitting there telling me, you just need to cut your calories. That's what it comes down to. And he just kept driving that into my head. You're eating too much. You need to work out more and you need to eat less. And so I did that. And then I tried, detoxification. I tried the raw vegan diet. I tried vegetarian. I went to the zone. I did the Atkins diet. Nothing worked until finally on my own, I was like, okay, like I became a research junkie, and I decided I got to fix myself because no one else is going to do it for me. And I dove into the research, and I realized I had to test my hormones because it was very hormonal, everything that was seeming to be happening. So no doctor at that time, I was 33, no doctor, naturopath, nobody's going to say to you at 33, it's your hormones. And because that just doesn't happen.
Were you a bit of a nut job at that point? Were you having like emotional issues and stuff like that? Or was that not part of what was going on? Oh yeah.
Like I had, my PMS was so severe that my doctor put me on an antidepressant during my PMS time. And, wow. I had the migraines always happened premenstrually. So I knew that there was, a piece there. My breasts would get really like fibrocystic breasts. I had endometriosis. I had already 2 surgeries on ovarian cysts that were big endometriomas in which are full of blood, that were growing out of control, that I had to get removed. Like, so there was definitely there's definitely a hormone piece.
At least.
Yes. And looking back, I do have, a theory of what happened. And it does happen to a lot of women when it's post-pregnancy. Your kid kind of either steals all the nutrients out of your system, and it does flip on some of these genes that maybe say, okay, you're not doing so well hormonally now. I don't know. And then it also, I have a lot of years later, I found out I've got really high levels of lead. And when you're pregnant, your bones soften. And lead will then leach out of lead stores in bones. So the lead will come out of the bones. And so I think there was a piece of that in there, and I was hypothyroid, and I didn't find that out for another 10 years. So I had this like waterfall effect of all these different things that happened, but it wasn't till I looked at the hormones that things got better.
And you got one. I didn't know about that. When you're pregnant, your bones soften and heavy metals will go out of those. So yes. you nailed it. You got one. I know that you wanted to get one.
I did. Yes. Yeah. Because he taught me something on my podcast. How dare he? Right. Yes. So I think that, I'll never know, but it really took me figuring out what were my hormones doing. I was really, my cortisol was super low. Estrogen was too high, progesterone too low, DHEA was too low. So I had adrenal issues. I was estrogen dominant. And I had to then take the time to fix those and figure out, okay, how should I be eating for what's happening in my hormone profile, which ended up being paleo. Paleo was definitely what worked best for me at that time. I'm still on paleo 12 years later. And I've gone in and out of keto, but keto doesn't work for me very well. So I had to figure that out. Then I had to figure out, okay, why am I didn't think I was stressed. I was doing what every other North American woman was doing. I'm working 5 days a week, working out at this boot camp 6 days a week. I was a single mother at the time. Like, what? This is normal.
Right.
My body didn't think it was so normal. So I quit all of that, went into started doing yoga, started, paying more attention to my body and my stress levels. I figured out my hormone stuff. And and emotional stuff, there's a lot of emotional things that also came up during that time that I really feel like was part of the recovery. And within, a year or two, all the weight came off and I was able to stabilize. And then I was like, you know what? There's other women going through the same thing. And it's so interesting now that I'm in, going into menopause. Now there's so many women out there that are being told the wrong information and they're having hormonal weight loss resistance. And so that is what I do. I'm trying to bring the information to these women to say, hey, it's not you, it's your hormones.
Right. And we've been doing this for a while, and it's like everyone in our world, the people that we talk to know that the calories in, burning more than you eat we know how ridiculous and ignorant that is, but it's still amazing to me when you really just step out of your own house just for a second, you see that, 95% of the population still thinks that that's
100%.
the route that goes.
Yep.
And it's just, their eyes are just starting to open now. So when you say that you're not the only woman out there with these issues, well, yeah, it's most women that are running into this kind of situation.
Yes. Yeah. And that's just it, is we're not given the information. And even when women do hear, hey, calories in, calorie out isn't all that it comes down to, it's like they don't believe you. And they still are so tied to that theory. And there is truth to it to a degree, but I could go down at that time. There was times that I try and cut my calories down to like 600, 700 calories a day. And I never would lose a pound. I wouldn't lose a pound. And I've had many, countless women who have done the same thing, who are like, I've done 1,000 calories a day for 3 months, and I fast, or I eat one meal a day, which is 500-600 calories. And they've been doing it for 3 months and they haven't lost a pound.
Right.
There you go. Calories in, calories out. It doesn't work.
But I think I get more than 600 calories when I wash my hair, like just a shampoo, right, going into me. I think that's not very much. And you do, we hear from women a lot of times that have that trainer, or, whoever it is that's telling them, well, you just need to eat less. You're not burning them more. Why don't you live on your treadmill? You should live on your treadmill.
Yeah. Or even like I just saw it this morning on a carnivore forum. And this woman said, I've been carnivore since September and I feel better and other things are improving, but I haven't lost any weight. And then I think there was 55 comments when she had just posted it. It was immediate. Like all these people got on, and I went through it. And of course, I see this every day. Maybe you need to cut out more dairy, eat less, go to one meal a day, cut the calories down farther, work out more. You're doing something wrong. And I'm like this, and I can't even be bothered. I'm not going to start saying like, actually, it's your hormones, probably.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about hormones, because, the reality is that, you said that there was some mental and emotional issues that you had to work through and kind of stuff, and that's what I find is that a lot of times, when a person is dealing with a problem, a lot of times there's more than one way to improve that situation. And if you can improve one aspect of it, it may improve enough that, people start thinking, oh, well, this is how you improve that issue, when really there's other ways to do it too. A lot of times people need to take more than one approach to fix one problem. So let's talk a little bit about hormones, and when you're working with clients, what are you seeing as are the big problems today, and what's the biggest information that you're able to give them that's like, oh wow, I didn't realize how
Mhm.
much that would help.
Mhm. So I kind of put women into two categories. If you are in your 20s and 30s, or first half of your 30s, so let's say up to 35, your hormones are going through this, 28-day, 30-day cycle. And it's very predictable, and we know where it's supposed to be at certain times of the month. And in these women, in these fertile women in their fertile years, if they're having hormonal imbalance, like I was at that time, then there's a lot of things that you can do to fix those hormonal imbalances. So let's say a woman's got polycystic ovarian syndrome. Well, things like the ketogenic diet and fasting or lower carb is going to be really helpful and will help to reverse that polycystic ovarian syndrome. If they've got adrenal issues, you can take certain supplements, you can moderate your lifestyle, deal with some of the emotional stuff. If you've got estrogen dominance, there's amazing supplements that will help clear some and break down that estrogen. You can fix your gut, you can take things like D-indole methane, you can take calcium D-glucarate, liver
Sure.
support, liver detox. All of those things is going to help your body to process and digest, metabolize all of that estrogen. And there's, you take Vitex to help bring up the progesterone. And so there's these amazing hacks that you can use to balance out those hormones. And that does require things like lifestyle, diet, digestive system, all of this kind of very holistic look at it. And I see those women, they can make big changes even within 3 months of doing, a certain protocol for whatever imbalance they have. And they feel a million times better, and the weight starts to come off, and all of those crazy side effects can go away.
Right. And, you do a lot more hormone work than I do. And, with high estrogen levels, for me, calcium D-glucarate seems to be the champion, but I think it's
It
because
does. Yeah.
I saw it work so well that that's what I've always gone to. Is there something else that you like more or equally to that for that particular issue?
I love the calcium D-glucarate as well. And in research, it does show very quickly it bringing down estrogen.
Hmm.
And it helps to break it down in the gut. And then there's D-indole methane, which is from, our cruciferous vegetables. It's a bit different. It's going to bind to those bad estrogens in the system and help remove them. So I like to combine the two together, the calcium D-glucarate and the DIM. And you never want to take more than 100 milligrams of DIM because more is not better. Calcium D-glucarate, it's very hard to find really good levels. Like you need to be upwards of 1,000 milligrams a day for calcium D-glucarate to really be effective. And then taking a liver support that helps with both phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification for excess estrogen. And here's the thing, Tony,
Yes.
big distinction here. When we say estrogen dominance, there's two kinds. There's one that is your estrogen and progesterone are both your progesterone is where it should be. It's at a healthy level. And then you have this crazy excess of estrogen that's like at the top of the charts. There's that estrogen dominance, and you got to bring that down and maybe pull up the progesterone a little bit with detoxification. And then there is estrogens in a okay place. It can even be too low, but your progesterone in relation to that estrogen is even lower. It has to be in a certain ratio. So we
Right.
want to see progesterone a little bit higher. So what often happens is doctors or functional medicine people will say, oh, you're estrogen dominant. You got too much estrogen. You got no progesterone. Let's clear out all this estrogen, which is like the worst thing you can do because we need estrogen. Estrogen is so important. It has 400 different functions in the body, and we're going to get to more of that. But
We're
basically,
going to
you don't
cover
want to.
all 400 today, people.
We are,
Just
yeah.
buckle up.
Buckle up. So when it's like that, you don't want to take calcium D-glucarate and DIM and bring that estrogen down farther. All you want to do is you want to bring up progesterone, because
Okay.
you might actually need to bring up estrogen as well because it's too low. But it's a very important distinction because you don't want to start lowering it even farther and then adding your progesterone. No, you need to keep that estrogen in a healthy range and boost up the progesterone. So that's two different kinds of estrogen dominance. I think that's really important.
So what kind of tests do you like to see people do to see where they are?
So for the cycling woman that is 35 and under, I like to see them do a saliva hormone test. This is going to test your available hormone levels. So serum tests bound hormone levels, which means it's bound to what's called sex hormone binding globulin. So only a little bit of that is going to be available for your body to use. So when you're cycling, it's more accurate to see what's available right now to your body, because it can be quite different from when you look at that compared to the serum levels.
So you would rather look in the saliva than in the blood and stuff like that. Is that what you're saying?
In a fertile woman, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In a cycling woman, yes, it tends to be much more accurate. I've seen things go really haywire, like not often, but I have seen like a woman, for instance, who her testosterone looked low on serum. And then when we did her saliva, it was off the charts high because of the available hormones. And she was getting the symptoms of that. She was getting really oily skin. She had acne, big boils were going all over her back because her functional doctor put her on testosterone.
Huh.
So just like, little things like that. So you're just going to see that it's a little bit more accurate, or can be a lot more accurate when you test via saliva. And saliva is also the best for cortisol, because you need to test cortisol 4 points throughout the day. So once you've hit 35 and up, depending on what your cycle's doing, what tends to happen now is the hormones start to now get really haywire. Progesterone starts to drop when you're in your late 30s. And then when you're going through your 40s at different times for different women, estrogen will begin to drop as well. But progesterone usually takes that dive first. So the more closer you are to you're in your mid 40s, then I prefer then to see either serum or actually saliva, but serum can then be accurate because the levels are just low enough that they're going to show up in serum. And so it does tend to be in relation to it. So, and you want to always do it on a certain day of the month. Doctors usually don't tell you that. So if you're a cycling woman, you want to test them on day 21 of your cycle, because if you tested them in the first half of your cycle, you don't even have progesterone. So you got to be very careful as to when you test them. So if you're going to go the serum route, your doctor isn't going to tell you when to do it. Do it on day 21 of your cycle, day 1 being the first day of your period.
Okay. And, with different things, we see that there's some things that really need to be improved with food, and some things might need supplements, at least temporarily, to see them fixed. Now, when you're working with hormones in this, what's the percentage of, how much do you feel of it is food that needs to change, and how much do you feel like they need help with some type of, whether it's a supplement or a hormonal therapy of some sort?
So great question.
I really ask great questions.
You're so great at asking questions, Tony.
Right? Sheesh.
It is a great question. Food has to come first, no matter where you are, what levels your hormones are at. If you don't change the food, you're only going to get so far with the supplements and the hormone treatment. So I always say, first comes first. You got to find the diet that's going to work for you. So, and that's going to change, right, as your hormones change. So like I said, if you're PCOS, then maybe you want to be a low carb keto. If you've got adrenal issues, thyroid problems, and a low progesterone, well, the keto's not going to be the answer. It's going to be more of a paleo-based diet, autoimmune, or something like that. So I always lean towards primal-based diets because I've seen them work the best.
Yeah.
So food has to come first. And then after that, if it doesn't fix the hormone problems, because a lot of the time it can, then you go to the supplements, and then in the younger women, and then if that doesn't work, then you do the hormone therapy. In women over 35, because it becomes an issue of your ovaries simply stop making hormones. And so you can take all the calcium D-glucan, Vitex, all of these natural things to help raise and lower your hormones, but The bottom line is you just simply aren't producing them anymore. So it's not that those things can't help. So as your estrogen starts to drop, you can take phytoestrogens. You can take things like black cohosh, maca, soy, things like that are going to act on the estrogen receptors like estrogen in a weaker form.
Right.
But for many women, they will not get the relief and they will not get the weight loss until they actually just replace the missing hormones, because there's no bringing them back. You can get rid of some of the symptoms by using some of those supplements, but the big benefits of hormone therapy and having those hormones, you just don't get until you replace the hormones to optimal levels.
Okay. And you keep saying the word Vitex. Is that a type of
Oh.
sport utility vehicle? Or I'm not familiar with Vitex. Tell me about that.
So Vitex is also known as chasteberry, and it's a type of herb that helps to raise progesterone levels.
Oh, I did not know that. I've never used that.
It's one of
That's
the
very interesting.
best ones. It's
And
one
you
of the
feel like
best
that
ones.
works well?
It does for fertile women. Yeah.
Okay. And how would they go about using that? As far as, are there rules for that? They just start chucking it in?
You can take there is some speculation. I don't use this, but to take it in the second half of your cycle when you're supposed to be producing the progesterone. But
Okay.
I find if women are really low in progesterone, you want to take it every day for at least 3 months. And then you can go to that cycling of it and see how that feels. But if you don't feel as though you're getting as much benefit, then it's okay to take it on a daily basis.
Now, I have an interesting question for you. Now, it makes sense to me that if, with one of those type of estrogen dominances, that whatever's causing the estrogen to go high, that could in turn cause the progesterone to go lower. But if someone took something like the Vitex to help raise progesterone, and if it worked, would that lower the estrogen at all, or does it not really work that way?
No, it does work. Like, yeah. They have to
yin
work.
and yang it?
Oh, they're so yin and yang. They're so important. Both of them are so important. And unfortunately, women are very scared because of, myths that are out there about estrogen. They're scared to take the estrogen, but you need estrogen to build progesterone receptors. So if you've got no estrogen, you're just slapping on a bunch of progesterone or taking a bunch of Vitex. It's only going to be very short-term effects from that before your body's like, yeah, this isn't working, because you need the estrogen to make the receptors for the progesterone. So that's important. And then the progesterone, when the progesterone comes up, yes, it can level out estrogen and it balances it out. And your uterus needs both, your breast tissue needs both. It's what protects your breast. It protects the uterine lining, the progesterone.
Okay, that's great. We've already talked about sex and breasts more than I thought we were going to, but I'm open to it. I'm here for that. Yeah. That's why I showed up. Okay, so while we're talking about sex and breasts, let's talk a little bit about fertility. And I'd like to hear what you see when women are having a lot of trouble getting pregnant.
So a lot of that is coming from low progesterone levels, as well as PCOS. So PCOS is the number one cause of infertility in women right now in North America. Right. So that also is remedied with progesterone. So that can really help because it helps to block the androgen, which is PCOS. You have high levels of testosterone. So progesterone can come in and it can actually help to occupy the androgen receptor site so that the androgens can come down. So you want to work on your insulin and you want to work sensitivity because you become insulin resistant when you're with PCOS. So if you can do that with a diet, with a little progesterone cream and the right supplements and to help with the insulin resistance, most women then can repair that system. So they can
I see the best thing with helping PCOS is really lowering carbs. And I was really interested to hear you say that. Do you have any thoughts on why that helps so much and why the lowering the carbs helps the PCOS?
Because high testosterone goes hand in hand. Like high testosterone causes high insulin resistance. So problems with the blood sugar. So in order to fix that high testosterone, what's driving the high testosterone, you got to fix the insulin resistance. So you got to bring down and create some insulin sensitivity, and then that testosterone will follow and will drop back down. So I've seen women do it on paleo. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it happen very quickly on carnivore, because I find that when even keto doesn't work for insulin resistance. Some people have really, really hardcore insulin resistance that not even a keto diet fixes. You put them on carnivore, and it's rapidly fixes their insulin
Right,
resistance.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
no carbs seem to be, zero carbs is surprisingly more significant than a very small amount of carbs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so strange. It's just some people's body. But like I said, I've had some women that do paleo or just a lower carb, and they can reverse their PCOS. So just kind of, once again, very bio individual.
Right.
Everybody's going to be different. And you have to be so careful, because PCOS also goes hand in hand with hypothyroidism. So you don't want to do carnivore or keto if you've got hypothyroidism. So it's all of these things kind of work synergistically together. So you have to really pay attention to, how does this feel in your body? Not how does it feel for your sister or your coworker on keto, because they're thriving and maybe they've lost 50 pounds, but then you're sitting there suffering and feeling like you're dying because you're on keto. Don't keep doing it.
Not just, just don't do
Right?
what the cool kids are doing. That's not
Yeah.
always what
Yeah.
it's about.
Because every hormone type, like there's different, very common imbalances that I see, and they all take something different, right? And if you do the wrong diet, you can exacerbate those problems. Like if you're hypothyroid and you have low adrenal problems, you don't want to go low carb. It makes it so much worse. You need the carbohydrates in order to fuel the adrenal system and the thyroid. So you have to be very careful.
Right. And we talk a lot about, looking at your breath rate and seeing what's going on with CO2 and when you're lowering carbs too much with those thyroid issues. And I'm hoping that we can talk a little bit about thyroid today too, but
Mm-hmm.
I want you to talk more about the fertility thing. I interrupted because that's the kind of guy I am.
Well, so I don't specialize in fertility, Tony, but I have had clients that definitely have come to me for those reasons. And it's very environmental. I find, like, there's so many xenoestrogens in our system.
Yeah.
And it's driving down our progesterone and making us estrogen dominant. So clearing out a lot of those toxins out of your system. Birth control is one of the worst things for a woman's fertility. If the longer you're on birth control, the harder it's going to be to get pregnant. It destroys your testosterone levels. It destroys your gut. Your body forgets how to run itself, how to produce its own estrogen and progesterone, and it's toxic. So there's the toxins, there's low progesterone levels, PCOS. Those are what I see contributing to it more than anything.
Yeah. And it's a big deal. I'd really like to see women who have been struggling with that have the ability to turn that around. And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And what's scary is that a lot of women feel like their only option is to do this $14,000 procedure and then go to a witch doctor. And, at this, all these certain times they got to wear, I got to paint this hair blue to do this. And they're doing all these things just to align everything. And then it just doesn't work. And then when you just allow the body to function like it's supposed to, all of a sudden you got this little person in your house. And I just think that that's a really fun thing.
And you need to change your diet, and the doctors don't tell you that, right? They don't even talk to you about diet or your gut health. And they're just jump straight to this, like you said, $14,000 IV therapy, when really you probably just needed to take out a lot of the inflammatory foods, support your reproductive system with
maybe you could eat something that has any nutrients in it whatsoever. Maybe try that out.
Yes.
Eat something that didn't come out of a vending machine.
It should always come first. With every illness and every disease out there, food has to come first.
Well, and I think it will, even from the doctors at some point, when they decide to educate them for more than 20 minutes in a 4-year degree period about food. So we'll make some calls. I'm not
going to hold my breath on that one.
Yeah.
You should see the new food guidelines that Canada put out 2 years ago. I choked on it. It was the most awful thing I've ever seen.
It's a little bit scary.
Oh, skim milk and grains. And,
Okay, so another very hot topic when it comes to hormone is, oh, I'm a little bit older and why is my face on fire? And as the women start going into menopause and all those fun time things happen, can you talk to that a little bit and maybe help some people feel a little better?
Yeah. I like to tell women that you do not need to have any symptoms of menopause. And most women are told just the opposite, which is suck it up, buttercup. This is what you got to go through.
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10 years. That's how long menopause can be, perimenopause, where you get the hot flashes and the night sweats and so many more things: foggy brain, low sex drive, brittle bones, dry skin, wrinkles, dry vagina, you name it. I mean, your whole system starts to fall apart when you start going through perimenopause into menopause. And we are being told by 90% of the medical system that you just need to go through this. And here's your antidepressant. And then because you're super emotional and anxiety ridden. And then here's your sleeping medication because you can't sleep because you're getting hot sweats and all night long and because you have no estrogen. And then here's your this very harsh drug for your bones because you're getting bone loss and osteoporosis. Here's your go spend tens of thousands of dollars on your skincare when you just needed some estrogen. The list goes on and on and on. And women do not need to experience any of this. And it just drives me nuts because we're so, doctors are like, okay, well, here's your insulin if you're diabetic. Here's your thyroid medication if you've got hypothyroidism. But yet when women are deficient in these very key hormones that keep us young and youthful and all of these things intact, they don't prescribe them. They don't say, oh, well, you know what? You need some bioidentical progesterone or estrogen, and that's going to cure your foggy brain and your depression and your anxiety and your sleep problems. But no, we're going to give you all these drugs instead. It's mind blowing. And it all stems from, so before in the 1950s, estrogen, horse's urine estrogen pills, which is called Premarin, was the number one prescribed medication out of all medication.
Wow.
In the United States. Number one. They used to treat breast cancer with it. Go figure.
Wow.
And then in 1998, they decided to run the biggest study that had ever been done on hormone replacement therapy in women. And they got I think it was 800,000 women or something, millions of dollars put into it. And what was interesting is they couldn't find a lot of women that weren't on hormones because they needed to have one leg of the study where women weren't taking anything, right? And most of these women, they were all on estrogen because this was the most prescribed medication. And so they actually ended up getting women that were between the ages of 60 and 70 for that arm of the study. Because they had stopped taking it. And these women, most of them were unhealthy. They were smokers. They were overweight. And so that was just one flaw of this study. So they had a couple arms of the study. One of the arms was Premarin only. So this is pregnant horses' urine estrogen, which we still have today, Premarin. And then the other arm of the study was with Provera, which was a mix of Premarin and progestin, which is a synthetic progesterone.
Right.
Well, within about 4 years, the rise of uterine cancer and breast cancer and stroke went up in the group of in the Provera group. So the one that was on progestin and the equine estrogen. So they actually stopped the study. They yanked that study, took those women off of that, and shouted out to the world, get every woman off of HRT. It's super dangerous. It's gonna cause breast cancer, it's called uterine cancer, everybody off. And now suddenly all these women were suffering. Right. Well, the one arm of the study that continued on the Premarin only, within a few years, showed a 30% reduction of breast cancer. But they don't
mention that.
They don't mention that. They don't mention it. And we're still to this day, when women hear the word estrogen, they're like covered their breasts, like, oh, no, don't put me on estrogen. And another thing was these were all oral. So even oral horse's urine, estrogen, which isn't like our own. It's a different makeup, obviously. Even taking that, in orally, it does increase your risk of heart attack and stroke when you take estrogen orally because it has to go through the liver. But even that, the benefits outweighed those risks because women's, their osteoporosis was better, their heart disease, not the heart disease, what did I say before?
You said the breast cancer and
The breast cancer reduction. Thank
Right.
you. The breast cancer was reduced. All of those things got better. So even on that, even that is better than no estrogen is what they discovered. And so now we've got the option though of bioidentical hormone therapy, which is transdermal on the skin, or you could do it in suppository or troches or implants, whatever, shots. And this bypasses then that first pass of the liver. So there's no increased risk of stroke or heart attack when you take it transdermally. And when women take bioidentical hormone therapy for even 1 year into their menopause, 1 year, it reduces all-cause mortality in women. It
Wow.
reduces breast cancer, heart disease, dementia, Alzheimer's. Like I said, the list goes on, 400 different functions. Estrogen helps a woman to be insulin sensitive. It helps a woman be leptin sensitive. So when you start going through this time, and what's the biggest thing you always hear is weight gain. Women suddenly get this big belly on them, 10, 20 pounds of weight gain in like a year. This is because the estrogen and progesterone are dropping. And so if women replaced those hormones, they could get rid of all of these symptoms. They could have a very healthy vagina and sex life, which is very important. Women's vagina will actually, because of the low estrogen, will atrophy and close. That's not fun.
That's not what you want.
That's
So
not what you want.
when is it the appropriate time to do these types of therapies? And how do you know when a woman really needs, like she's not producing enough, and when you're just going to put stuff in there and add to a load that's already too high?
So you always, as you're going through perimenopause, if you're getting symptoms and if you're still cycling, but you're getting symptoms, so you're getting the hot flashes and the mood disorder and the anxiety, depression, insomnia, then you can try the natural route first. If that doesn't work, then you can start replacing. And I always start women with some progesterone because that's usually what drops first. If that doesn't get rid of things, then you can do small amounts of estrogen once the period stops, which means you're going into menopause now. So menopause is classified as 1 year without a period. So once you're going into that stage of you're missing your periods, and then it's longer and longer between them, then you can start, and it's safest then to start your estrogen therapy. And you have a 10-year window where it's been shown in research, in multiple studies, that is the safest time and the most beneficial time for women to be on estrogen replacement. And you always need progesterone in there because it counteracts the growth of estrogen.
Okay, so you're not just using one.
No, you have to use both. Yeah,
Okay.
You got to use both. Even if you don't have a uterus, doctors often tell women that even if they don't have a uterus, they just can use the estrogen. Well, progesterone is very breast protective, and it actually helps with the myelin sheaths in the brain, and so it helps your brain function. It's very anti-anxiety, so women can use it at nighttime, and it can help them with sleep. It reacts on the GABA receptors of the brain, so it calms the body down. It's got so many amazing functions. It can help with sex drive. It can help with weight loss, as well. Estrogen can as well. So it's interesting because estrogen on a too high is going to cause weight gain, but too low, it's going to cause weight gain as well.
Right. And we find that a lot of things have like a bell curve like that, and that makes sense. But when people hear about studies, like you said, with just about anything, they hear something is good or something is bad, and they want all of it or none of it. And that's not really how the body works.
No. And so for each woman, it's very individual. There's some women that need to go on very high doses, which is called physiological restoration. And so they actually mimic what their cycle was doing when they were in their 20s and the levels of hormones that they had in their 20s. And so they do it in a rhythm, and they mimic their natural cycle, and they take it in very high doses. And those women, so some women need to be on it like that. Other women, they can be on very small amounts and it gets rid of all of their symptoms. So it's really, you work with somebody that understands it, work with a doctor that's open-minded to it.
Right.
Don't fear the estrogen. It's so ridiculous because if estrogen was such a bad thing, I always say this, I'm like, well, then all of us in our 20s would have dropped dead of breast cancer because we have raging amounts of estrogen.
That's true. I've not thought about that before.
Right?
That's very true.
And it's when our estrogen starts to deplete that we have a chance of breast cancer. Estrogen is a growth hormone. So if you've got cancer cells and you go put in all this estrogen, yes, it can speed up that process. It magnifies it, right? So if you've got estrogen cancer, estrogen driven breast cancer in your family, then no, you probably don't want to, or you want to be very monitored by a doctor if you're going to take it. But yeah, you just don't be afraid. And then the other thing, people, no problem being on birth control pill. Oh, I've been on birth control for 20 years, but don't put me on bioidentical estrogen. And it's like, do you know how much higher those doses are? You're taking them orally, your risk of stroke and oh my gosh, and even risk of breast cancer goes up a little bit with birth control.
Are there birth control alternatives that you feel are appropriate or that don't affect the hormones so much? And are there cool tricks? What are some cool tricks?
Oh, there's no cool tricks. It's brutal. I don't know why as if they haven't developed something for a man to take at this point, but you really don't have, like I was a person that could never be on birth control because I had such bad reaction to it. So I ran the gamut of trying to find myself natural birth control. And the only one is Copper Iud, which can create a heavier bleed for women. So that can, in cramping, so that for some women, it doesn't work. But that's probably the best choice as far as ease and, side effects go. And then there's things like the diaphragm that you could use and good old fashioned condoms.
I've heard about those. Yeah.
Have you?
Those.
Yeah. I didn't like those.
But are there any other downsides of the Copper IUD? I don't know.
Yeah, there's speculation that it can raise your copper level.
Okay.
Yeah, which you don't want really high levels of copper, so you would have to monitor that. But I went on it. I didn't have any adverse side effects from it.
That's cool. Okay. Okay. So we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon, but I wanted to talk a little bit about thyroid before we did that. Do you have a favorite thyroid angle to talk about?
Yeah, I do.
All right, let's hit it up one time.
It is once again something that is oftentimes misdiagnosed, not diagnosed, and mistreated in the medical world. They're very afraid to use T3 hormone, thyroid hormone, which is the usable form of thyroid in your body. So there's T4, free T4 and free T3 are the two main thyroid hormones. T4 has to convert into T3 in order for it to be utilized, for your metabolism to work properly. 90% of doctors out there only use T4 only prescription medication for it. And so many women are on Synthroid, some form of T4 only medication. And they stay in this very hypo state, very under medicated and never get better. And so I always want women to explore, at least try getting on some desiccated thyroid. So there's T4 and T3 in the mix. Always make sure that you test your reverse T3, which very rarely gets done with the doctor. And I won't get into that because that's a whole nother segment.
Right. Yeah, I get that. But
ideally, you want your body temperature. And I'm really big. We talk about testing when we talked together earlier this week about the little hacks that you have to try and figure out someone's bioindividuality. My big one is temperature, body temperature, basal body temperature. And so I always tell women, if you suspect a thyroid problem and nobody's diagnosing you properly and they're only testing, for instance, your TSH, take your basal body temperature when you get up in the morning, before you get out of bed, and then again in the afternoon. And if you're not reaching, and if you're on thyroid medication, definitely do this, because if you're not reaching like 98.2, 98.6 in the middle of the afternoon, and you're reaching like 96.5, 97, then we know that more than likely you are not optimized on thyroid medication. And if you're somebody that's suspecting hypothyroidism, then that really shows that you could very easily be hypo. There's other reasons why you might have a low temperature, but
And are there rules to how you check that temperature? How do you like people to do that before they get
so
out of bed?
yeah,
Do you do
before
the
they get
under
out of
the arm
bed,
thing or in the,
I
how do
say
you
in
do?
the mouth. If you're going to do it
Okay.
out of the arm, you have to add, what is it? A couple degrees to it. But you want to use a Gara thermometer. For those watching the video, I'm going to show what that looks like. It looks like an old mercury thermometer. You can get it on Amazon. They're 10
And it's
bucks.
called what?
A Gara thermometer, Gera thermometer, Gara thermometer. And you have to shake it down, but this is most accurate. Digital is not accurate. I've tried a million of them. They never work. They always give you something different. So that's how you know you're optimized on thyroid medication, because you could have the best looking labs in the whole world, but if that thyroid medication isn't actually getting into the cell and working, then you're going to remain in a hypothyroid state. I had like at the top of the chart T3, midway T4, and I was severely hypothyroid because my reverse T3 was off the charts, which is a storage hormone. So I wasn't getting that T3. That was just picking up on the medication I was taking. So, but I can't stress it enough that if you suspect a thyroid problem or you're on thyroid medication and you don't feel well and you still feel hypo, take your temperature and let that be your gauge. If it jumps around, this is a good thing to know. Like, let's say, you get up in the morning, it's 96.5, and then it goes up to 97.5, and then it drops down to 96. If it's jumping around more than a few degrees, then you know that there's also an adrenal component to your thyroid, which oftentimes, almost all thyroid patients have adrenal issues. So you will see it 0.2 of a degree. If it's bouncing around more than 0.2 of a degree throughout the day, you could take a couple temps readings throughout the day. Then you know, okay, there's an adrenal problem. So you want to test that 4-point cortisol saliva test, do a thyroid panel, include the reverse T3. And ideally, you want your T4 to sit in the middle, and if you're on both T4, T3 medication, and you want your T3 to be in the upper quarter quadrant of that range. If not, some women feel actually better over range on their T3. So, and you want your reverse T3 to be under 15, preferably under 12. And the range of reverse T3 actually says that you're fine up to 24, I think it is, or 22. That's not true. That range is garbage.
I've seen some ranges that are garbage. Yeah.
Yep. Anything over 15, you're showing that it's a problem.
Okay. And can we talk a little bit about, diet choices that can affect specific thyroid issues, whether someone is hypo or something like that, and diets that can affect that and why?
Yeah. So if you've got Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, so it's an autoimmune condition, we know then there's a big inflammatory component, and you always then want to start with an autoimmune paleo protocol. And even if you did it for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, so that you're removing all those inflammatory foods, and then you put them in one at a time afterwards and to see which ones your body is reacting to, that's super important, because that's going to help you find what your perfect diet is.
Right.
So you kind of have to, you got to strip it all down, get rid of all that stuff. Don't worry about carbs. Don't worry about calories. Just get rid of the inflammatory foods. That will help the antibodies to come down as well. And then you put them in one at a time and really pay attention to how you're feeling. And then you can, because most people can get away with eating some of them, depending on how bad their gut is. But, I've had some people, they'll react to peppers, but they're okay with potatoes, or they're okay with nuts and seeds, but they're not okay with tomato. So you want to figure out which ones work for you, which ones don't. If you are, subclinical hypothyroid, you don't want to do a low carb diet. Please don't. It really aggravates your thyroid. I did a whole podcast episode on this because I was so tired of hearing so many keto carnivore doctors saying, oh, it's okay, you can do it, it's not going to affect the thyroid, it just means that your thyroid you just don't need as much T3. And I'm like, That is baloney. Like, that's so not true. And so I actually dug into the research, and in the episode I go through these PubMed articles that state here are the studies that have been done, and here's what happened to people's T3. And it does lower the T3. It's a natural response. The body thinks that it's starving. And so what happens, like, we all know that, well, we might not know this, but one of the causes of hypothyroidism is called Thyroid sick syndrome. And that is from a low calorie diet. So there's an actual terminology for it in the medical system, which is caused from too low calorie. And what happens when you eat keto, for a lot of people, you end up very naturally calorie restricting. And then they go on to fast every day. And then they're going OMAD. Then they're going carnivore. And your poor little thyroid's going, what about the glucose? I need the glucose to run properly. And so do your adrenals. So does the adrenal system. So like I said, there's an adrenal component usually to hypothyroidism. So you want to repair those things. So it's not to say you can never do keto or fast. I have tons of women in my group that are hypothyroid,
right.
and I'm fasting them every couple of days. We're doing low carb, and then we do a carb up. So we're signaling to the system, but they're also optimized thanks to being in the program. They're optimized on their medication. Right. So you need to you need to optimize it. You need to be on the right amount of medication. You need to figure out if there's a root problem to the hypothyroid. You need to clear that out, take the right supplements, and then you can utilize a carb cycling diet going in and out of keto to help you get rid of that weight.
Yeah, and we see people that do well, and there's some type of CO2 component to what goes on there, and eating carbs creates a byproduct of eating carbs is CO2, and that helps us, a lot of the thyroid things function. And so there's some of those doctors will see somebody do fine. Well, they have really good CO2 levels. They may have a bigger buffer range there,
right?
Where other people are gonna really just put themselves in the dirt, basically. And I think that kind of goes back to that. We really got to start looking at the person instead of the rules.
Yes.
Kind of a situation.
Yes. Pay attention to your body and where it's at. And then that, like I said, that can change. You may start at autoimmune, and then 6 months down the road, you could be doing something completely different because that's what your body can handle and tolerate at that time.
Right. Well, Karen, what are we doing tomorrow? Am I meeting you at the Taco Bell or something? I'm just hanging out with you all week.
Let's do it.
Okay. That's going to be a good time. But Karen, this has been really, really fun and eye-opening with a lot of stuff. Where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. So of course, the podcast, The Other Side of Weight Loss, we've got 150 plus episodes, and there's this really cool guy coming on soon. So you probably want to tune in. Yeah. His middle name's Christopher. And also, if you head over to KarenMartell.com, I've got a great hormone quiz that will help you to kind of just start you out to figure out, so you can help figure out which hormones could be out of balance in your body and contributing to your weight loss resistance. So it's this very comprehensive quiz. I give you a 2-week hormone and metabolic meal plan that goes with it, a little ebook that explains, some things that you can get started on as far as, okay, if you have this imbalance, if it looks like you've got too high testosterone, then we're going to put you over here to the keto category, or, and I tell you which diet is best for you at this time, depending on what your results were of that quiz. So it's a really great place to start.
Okay. So I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll put a link to the quiz too. And you can find those show note links at kickitnaturally.com/episode 370. Karen, you're like a hometown hero.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you coming on and sharing stuff I really like the girl wisdom. I kind of fall short on some girl wisdom things, even though my first book was about menstrual cramps. Don't get me wrong, but I really like having you on here to kind of dig into some of this hormonal stuff. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon. So that was pretty awesome, right? I hope that was helpful. Now, if you want to take Karen's quiz or check out her website and stuff, just go to the show notes page and we'll have all those links on there. Just go to kickitnaturally.com/episode 370. And don't forget to check out her podcast, The Other Side of Weight Loss. All right, guys, we'll see you guys next week.